That's a scene from the horror cult film Alice, Sweet Alice. It may look like a simple slasher, but it's so much more, delving into a deep psychological horror story rich with symbolism and a murder mystery. I'm going to review this movie and tell you why you should be watching it tonight with the lights off. I'm also going to touch on another cult horror, The Pit.
I'm sorry about that, Miss Oliphant.
What is a cult film? A cult film or cult classic is a movie that has acquired a cult following, which is a group of fans which may be small but passionate, highly dedicated to the movie, often forming communities of like-minded individuals who love these movies despite what the greater public may think. Cult films could have bombed in the box office and could have been panned by critics when it was released, but for a number of different reasons gained popularity later, possibly from being released on various media or shown on TV to a larger audience. These movies are often considered too eccentric or subversive for the broader market, but perfect for those who love them. I'm going to talk about a couple of cult movies, namely Alice, Sweet Alice, which I love and have seen many times, and The Pit, 1981, which I didn't like so much, but has a few similarities to Alice. Of course, there are so many cult movies one can talk about, especially from the 70s and 80s. I could talk about A Boy and His Dog, made a year before Alice, Sweet Alice, about a post-apocalyptic dystopia where a boy uses his telepathic dog to find women to have sex with in return for helping the dog find food. They eventually go underground to find a subterranean city with the people who cannot reproduce, so the young man is taken and used for his sperm. This movie would inspire movies such as the Mad Max movies, especially Road Warrior. I could talk about David Lynch movies like Eraserhead.
Just cut them up like regular chickens?
Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
And other so-called midnight movies, mostly low-budget B movies that were fun to go to, literally at a midnight screening. Add Rocky Horror Picture Show to that list, maybe the most popular cult horror, itself a parody tribute to earlier horror B movies. The title Alice, Sweet Alice comes from a British religious publication called Catholic Truth Society, written in 1898 that goes, "Then there is Alice, sweet Alice, your eldest born, who leans over the back of your chair and sweeps your face with her brown curls." It's ironic that the title comes from a Catholic publication, considering the movie's original title, Communion, was changed by the distributor because they were afraid the public would think it's a religious movie. It is a religious movie in a way, as in it is mostly an anti-religious movie, particularly anti-Catholic. The film was also released under the titles The Masked Murderers and Holy Terror. The movie centers around a family in Paterson, New Jersey in the 60s, opening with two young girls, the younger of whom, played by actress and model Brooke Shields, is about to go through her first Holy Communion, a church ritual for which she is receiving plenty of attention, which is making her elder sister Alice envious. Alice is a very troubled girl. She plays tricks on people, she antagonizes the landlord. This is a lot for the mother to handle, especially considering she's divorced and raising the girls on her own. Tragedy strikes, and the younger sister is horrifically murdered. Alice clearly lacks empathy and is in fact questioned by the police as a suspect. She is eventually kept in a hospital and watched. The doctor there is empathetic toward the young girl, whether or not she committed murder, as Alice is truly troubled and misunderstood. Alice's father returns after his daughter's death, consoles Alice, who loves and misses him, and attempts to figure out who the murderer was, rebuking the detectives who consider Alice to be a major suspect. The sad part is that returning for the funeral isn't enough for Alice, who needs a father figure in her life, and is of course affected terribly by her parents' divorce. Alice also has to deal with other adults in her life, like her horrible nagging, screaming aunt and a groping landlord. Alice was always envious of her sister's attention. She struggled to deal with her parents' divorce and some horrible adults in her life. Is this enough to drive her to murder? The symbolism in this movie is simply off the charts, especially the religious icons and statues. It seems some parts of the movie there's a religious statue or some other kitsch art in every frame. Sometimes we see statues appearing to gaze at victims, like the two crucifixes in Annie's room after she was stabbed, with a stigmata, by the way, cuts in hands and feet, and a direct reference to the crucified Christ, who looks down on Annie, and also the detective with the reverse shot. Statues look on as the killer takes her first victim, Alice's sister, as if to watch and judge her. There are always eyes on you wherever you go when you are in a church or a rectory, or even at home if you are a devout Catholic. This will all make more sense later when you find out the motives of the killer. There are a lot of references to the church's views on divorce and the effect of these public stances on some devout Catholics, some of whom may become radicalized, who may show hatred towards members of the congregation for what they consider to be a sin that may have to be paid for in this life. I won't spoil the ending, but I can give some insight into the maker of the movie, writer and director Alfred Soule. The coincidental reference to his soul is not lost on me. Alfred Soule's soul was excommunicated from the parish of Paterson, which means he is condemned to hell and unable to enter heaven. This rare move by the Bishop of Patterson happened after Alfred Soule made his first movie, a smut film. This greatly influenced Soule and his decisions for the movie. So you can see how anti-religion it is, and Soule even admits it. He even wrote Mrs. Tredoni, the caretaker of the priest's rectory, based off an actual woman who lived in the rectory near Soule's home. I don't think that woman would have been flattered. Obviously, this is not based on a true story, but a movie made with some powerful statements based on the director's true feelings of religion and Catholicism in specific. One thing you'll notice watching this movie, it is expertly shot. The POV shots especially put you into the movie, several times walking up or down winding staircases with danger lurking at any step. The killer ready to slash at you. The channel Bravo considered the jump scare scene of Alice removing her mask to show yet another gruesome mask as one of their top 100 scariest movie moments. TV Guide praised the movie as an effective, low-budget horror film from director Soule, whose impressive grasp of filmmaking technique and eye for the grotesque keeps the viewer on edge throughout the movie. Many people compare the movie to Dario Argento's Italian giallo films, gory, colorful, and intense. There is talk of a remake, and to that I have to say, leave Alice alone. I've seen this movie maybe 6 or 7 times, sometimes watching it around Halloween, and it never fails to thrill, even knowing the ending, and it's always worth the wild ride it takes you on. Comparing The Pit, another cult horror movie, and Alice Sweet Alice may be apples to oranges, or maybe jack-o'-lanterns to those hardened little gourds, or it may be simply unfair to compare something like The Pit to such a great horror movie. This movie also centers around a very troubled child, Jamie, who talks to his teddy bear, and yes, the teddy bear talks back, in his own voice. You'd think it would be all in his head, considering the voice is his own, but the bear seems to move around on its own, so it is a sentient being, with Jamie's voice for some reason. If only they had the bear be in Jamie's head, and Jamie could have fought against it, trying not to kill people, but giving into the bear, or his deep alter ego. Instead, the movie makes it clear that the things we see are really happening. The monsters in the pit are not some metaphor, they are really monsters in a pit. This pit is a random hole in the woods. How these things could have survived before without getting out is unknown. How Jamie found it is unknown. It's even unknown how anyone could walk right into this thing in broad daylight. Pushing a wheelchair into it is one thing, pushing someone in the dark into it another, but how on earth could someone just fall into this obvious pit? And that's the movie's problem. Whatever themes it wants to get across are lost because it's an unbelievable story. We don't have a sympathetic character like we do with Alice. We have a nasty little pervert murderer with no redeeming qualities, and he's comically evil. Maybe, just maybe, if you take the movie as a metaphor, like the YouTube channel Glutton of the Obscure does, it can have some value. Otherwise, if not, you take it at face value, as the movie seems to represent itself, we get a slasher that's not a good slasher, with monsters that aren't scary. So we have a movie without a purpose, without providing entertainment to hook anyone in, without any believable premise, and without even a good ending. The shock is that the girl has a pit too. So what? These things seem to be everywhere, and after spending the whole movie pushing people in, this kid doesn't think it could happen to him. Maybe that's the whole point. And if you've gotten to the ending, that whatever this boy does, some girl may do too.